Welcome back to the Vandy Sports Podcast here on a rain-soaked Saturday night at First Bank Stadium. Vanderbilt falls to South Carolina 28-7. Joey, it was a bad result, a bad matchup at a bad time of the season. That's kind of how I summarize this. We had kept talking, week after week these last 3-4 games heading into the games and say, man, when is the depth going to catch up to Vanderbilt? When is the tired legs and 6 straight games going to catch up to Vanderbilt? Well, it finally did tonight. And I think something that we need to remember is, yes, South Carolina has a ton of talent with Sellers and Sanders and a phenomenal defensive line. I think a lot of this is Vanderbilt played their C, maybe D game, and South Carolina really came to play. I think if South Carolina turns the ball over a couple of times and gives up a few more big plays than they did, this is a ball game. But I think it was just a combination of South Carolina coming ready to play. They had a lot of momentum after a big win last week, and Vanderbilt is, they're tired. I mean, they were gassed tonight, and I think the game tells you how tough it is to win in the SEC. Clark said that. He said it was a 3-phase ass kicking, and that's what happens when you don't come to play in the SEC. You will get embarrassed, and he said that before this season. Vanderbilt got embarrassed tonight, and I don't want it to cloud the season. Vanderbilt's still bowl eligible. They're 6-4. You got 3 weeks left. Bye week coming up, LSU and then Tennessee. But Joey, this was a night that taught us all that it was never going to be easy to finish out this season for Vanderbilt.
Billy, Vanderbilt's got a South Carolina problem. That's 16 straight losses to South Carolina, and tonight felt like kind of a microcosm of them. Clark Lee has had his best year this year as Vanderbilt's head coach. This is his best team, and South Carolina was still too physical up front. I thought South Carolina outplayed Vanderbilt in just about every aspect. I thought they outcoached Vanderbilt in a lot of aspects, especially with Tim Beck's offense versus South Carolina's defense. I thought maybe the story of the game was the way Vanderbilt was dominated up front. They just really could never get anything going offensively. There was one drive where Pavia really used his legs, and the story we got to talk about, Diego Pavia's injury, right? That's maybe the story of the night if it is as bad as maybe some people would think. I'm still holding out that it might not be awful, but Clark Lee's comment after the game was, I don't really know what's going on. So we don't really know either, and I think if it was completely nothing, we would probably know that. It also doesn't mean that it's something terrible, though, and I think that's a really interesting storyline in the next couple of days. But for now, Vanderbilt got their butts kicked, right? They got a 3-phase
ass kicking,
and I don't think there's any denying that. The tackling was kind of a microcosm of that as well. C.J. Taylor talked at length about it. Langston Patterson talked at length about it. Rocket Sanders had, I think, a 170 or 180 all-purpose yards. That can't happen. It happened with Nate Noel, and it happened again today. Vanderbilt, I don't think, is fully equipped to win in an environment like this where it's raining, where it's gloomy, where you can't really throw it, which is kind of odd because their kind of brand of football is that they want to be a hard-nosed team that controls the time of possession. But especially today, they were not equipped to win that way with the bye coming, with how banged up they are. Diego Pavia is banged up, obviously, was banged up coming into the game. Cedric Alexander was a guy who I thought was a little banged up. He looked better this week than he did last week, a little more explosive, had that really nice catch down the sideline. But, I mean, they just weren't good enough tonight in a lot of aspects. And a lot of that I do attribute to their legs catching up with them being banged up. I think they could have used that bye week this week rather than last week. That would have been the perfect time for it, I think. But that's not how football plays sometimes, and Vanderbilt wasn't good enough tonight. Vanderbilt is now maybe even looking down the seam of a 6-6 season because LSU's a really tough game on the road, and then they haven't beat Tennessee in a while. So Vanderbilt was not able to rewrite history tonight in a way that I think Clark Lee's team has been able to do through a lot of the year. And it almost reminds me of, this is going to be a crazy comparison, but the SEC tournament game a few years ago against Texas A&M when Vanderbilt lost after beating Kentucky and after beating LSU. At some point, natural causes define magic. And that's kind of what I felt tonight, right? Vanderbilt has not been awesome the last few games, but kept finding ways to win. They kept finding ways to ride their momentum. But at some point, it'll catch up to you. And I think we saw it tonight with Vanderbilt. It was the wrong team on the wrong night, and it certainly wasn't Vanderbilt tonight.
Yeah, a big thing I noticed tonight when South Carolina was running the football, and even when Lenore Sellers was scrambling around, and Patterson talked about this after the game, they would have him corralled for a sack, but he would find a way to get out of it, and he would keep the play alive. And the big play, I think second quarter where Vanderbilt had him sacked back here, inside their own 15-yard line. Sellers breaks out of it, finds a guy down the field, and I think they ended up scoring on that drive. So again, that Sellers had a few plays like that where Vanderbilt has him corralled but can't bring him down. And then Rocket Sanders, my gosh, I mean, he's a tank, and Vanderbilt just could not tackle him. But even when you thought he might be stopped for a no gain or a loss of yards, he would pick up 3. And he turned 6 yards into 10 yards, and he broke open a 33-yarder, had that short touchdown run. I just thought South Carolina out physicaled Vanderbilt. They manhandled them, and I'm not going to sit here and say we fully expected that. Like, I think Vanderbilt has a better effort out there, and I think they know that. I still don't think they're done yet this season, but man, it just shows you that Vanderbilt has the pieces in the right position to make a play, but sometimes talent just wins out. Mm-hmm. The quote, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard, tonight the talent was working hard for South Carolina. They were well coached, they were prepared, and they just ran through Vanderbilt. And part of me worries a little bit about this team mentally. Again, I'm not sitting here saying this team's going to lose out and finish 6-6 and head into a bowl game with kind of a cloud over the season. I mean, that very easily could happen, but I wonder how this team reacts. And I made sure to ask CJ about this. The 2-week period after Missouri, they came out hot and firing against Alabama, and I think they can do that in Baton Rouge. You're also playing a really talented LSU team, so I wonder if they can take that 2-week period after Missouri and use this 2-week period in the same way. Stephen Hubbard talked about it. He said we were punching each other in the face, after that Missouri loss, and we were ready to play that week, but we had to wait another week. So if they can do that again, I think they'll be fine. But I worry a little bit about them mentally and where the belief is. And again, I feel crazy saying that because the belief has been there all season. So I'm just that's a slight concern right now. But Rocket Sanders is my MVP tonight, and Vanderbilt I thought a microcosm was when you had him down for a short gain, he would pick up 3 or 4. And I thought Sanders was just a huge difference in this game.
I think he was one of the differences in this game, and also South Carolina's defensive line was. Diego Pavia just didn't seem to have it in him tonight, and a lot of that was not his fault. A lot of the night he was running around. I think late in the fourth quarter, and it might be this way still, he was only sacked twice, and I just couldn't believe that. I was like, man, I thought he's been running around all night. I can't believe it's only been 2 times, and that's saying something, right? Stephen Hubbard, I thought, really struggled at times, and so did the entire offensive line, right? Castillo got ran by one time. And I think maybe bigger than them not being able to get it going in the pass game was they weren't able to really establish anything on the run outside of Pavia. And I thought his hurdle was the play of the game for Vanderbilt, although there wasn't many to pick from. But if they want to beat teams like South Carolina, they've got to do more up front. And part of me worries that they're almost figured out in a sense. And I forget who, somebody brought this up to us earlier in the day. New Mexico State probably got figured out halfway through the year last year as well and still found a way to win 9 games. So it's not the end-all be-all, but I think at some point Vanderbilt's playmakers have to make plays, and I just wonder, outside of Pavia and Stowers, do they have enough to be able to do that? I think this offseason they're going to really have to go get more. Whether the Pavia suit falls their way or not, they're going to have more weapons, at least on the perimeter, right? Skinner and Sherrill kind of are what they are. Alexander's a good back. They might need another back. They've got some questions on offense that I think we've kind of overlooked all year that we saw in fall camp. But they were so shielded by the way they were able to scheme and put those guys in good positions that you never really saw it. Tonight, when they're getting manhandled up front like that, and I thought Clark Lee had made a good point too, like they didn't get enough guys in space, and they did that more in the second half. They got the ball out on the perimeter a little more. Didn't really happen a lot through the first half. They were just so insistent on banging in their identity, right? And South Carolina just handled them up front, plain and simple. Sometimes the bigger, faster, stronger guys win. That's what happened tonight, right? Tim Beck couldn't out-scheme that, and honestly, it's pretty hard to do that when they're getting in the backfield as quick as they are. I think there is some scheming that he could have done. He's done it in other games, but just not tonight, Billy. And that's kind of my theme is, like, I don't think tonight changes anything for me necessarily in terms of the season outlook, anything along those lines, but wasn't their night, right? They weren't good enough tonight in basically any aspect to win. I think we knew it when Diego Pavia fumbled that in the red zone when they got the ball for the first time. I'm kind of rambling here, but bigger than all, just they didn't have it tonight. And whether they have it the rest of the way, I think it's a thing we'll debate the next 2 weeks, but certainly didn't tonight. And I don't think tonight gave you a whole lot of reason to believe that they will the last 2 weeks of the year, but we've seen a lot of reason throughout the other couple weeks. So I can't say I'm super worried about them moving forward. What I am worried about is, are they physical enough? Do they have enough playmakers? And can Tim Beck's scheme, if they aren't those two things, can Tim Beck's scheme kind of mask that the rest of the way now that people know what they're going to do?
Something I'm a little surprised by tonight, Joey, is the fact that they were beaten in all three phases. Yep. You know, we had talked after a lot of games this season, like, man, that was a three-phase victory. Last week, Kentucky, they won games this year in all three phases, and for them to lose tonight in all three phases was a little surprising. They didn't play well defensively, certainly didn't play well offensively, and special teams, I wouldn't say it was bad, but I think they probably could tell you there's more out there. Martell Height fumbled on that punt that could have been a safety, right? That would have been a
or it could have been a touchdown.
Touchdown, yeah. I mean, that could have been another 7 or 2 points, or not a safety, for probably a touchdown, I guess.
Yeah, I think it touched him and it could have gone in the end zone though.
Either way, safety or a touchdown, I think. So that could have been points. That was a Martell Height fumble, and they just didn't. There was no difference-making phase. It wasn't there. And that's what surprises me a little bit, because we had talked all season about that. And so I think they can, because, again, it's going to be a lot easier for them to figure out the defense and the special teams, right? I think what you do here, Joey, and I'm no football coach, but offensively, you're a little limited right now. I mean, we've seen that. They've been struggling since the Alabama game. I think offensively you continue to do what you can do, anything you can do. This season, they already hit a bowl game. Another win might have to come by defense and special teams. Mm-hmm. A couple of turnovers on defense, a big punt return that, puts you in good field position on special teams. Like, I don't see them winning on offense. Yeah. And again, they won on offense, I think, against Virginia Tech. They won on offense against Alabama. I thought the defense won against Kentucky. Ball State, whatever, I guess offense. But, I say that I don't think they can win on offense in these last couple of games. And I think tonight showed that, like you said, the magic can run out. And I thought it did tonight. Pavia did. I thought, you mentioned it, only 2 sacks. I mean, only being sacked twice is pretty incredible tonight. So I did think he did all he can. And I do want to talk about Pavia and his injury. We don't really know anything. Yeah. I mean, the hit he took was a fairly normal hit. I mean, it was a big shot, but I don't know if he landed awkwardly on his ankle or his knee that he's had braced up a lot, several games this season. But that's a massive storyline. Yeah. I mean, Clark said, didn't really give us an update. It'll probably stay in the dark a little bit these next couple of weeks.
Being a bye.
Right, and so but rest up if you're Diego, and offensively, they got to find some answers, because they've got to offer more than what they've offered on offense in these last few weeks, and really since the Alabama game. So I look at it, Joey, and again, I go back to defense and special teams is going to have to win these last couple of games. Again, give credit to South Carolina that they were the better team. Their fans showed up, and again, Vanderbilt's fans showed up too. Yeah. And I think this is a gut punch. I mean, naturally, you kind of harken back to last year a little bit, and so it's disappointing. But again, for Vanderbilt in this program, it is gut check time. Can you finish a season strong? And Clark has talked about, we're here for the long haul. We're, too often in seasons, one game defines our season. Let's see if they're up for the challenge.
We talked about it a little bit early in the year last year, and they certainly failed the test. But I think right now they're at kind of a crossroads, right? Like, you look at it and say, man, if they go into LSU and they're prepared and they come out and push them or win, that alters the course of your season. But if this bye week is kind of wasted and they come out in 2 weeks and they just look flat and they look like their offense has not figured anything out, going to be tough for them to do anything the rest of the way. And I look at this bye week, it's just a huge, huge week for them. Maybe one of the biggest weeks of their season, just to figure out. I think we know what they're made of, but do they have enough in the tank the rest of the way to be able to be effective? I think offensively is where I look at that. Does Tim Beck have another wrinkle he can add? Does Jerry Kill have another wrinkle he can add? Those guys have been around football for a long time, but I think they're really going to be tested. LSU, I think, can really challenge them, especially in Baton Rouge. Tennessee maybe has a better defensive line than South Carolina. I think it's pretty comparable. So they're not getting a week off here, and I think this week is going to be huge just to see kind of what they have and whether Diego Pavia is able to go or not. I think we'll hear some rumblings about that, but bigger than all, I think today just felt dark for me, Billy. I look at it and I'm thinking, man, it was rainy, it was gloomy out. Diego Pavia goes down, gets injured. I think even the storyline with Pavia's extra year eligibility maybe dampened the mood a little bit externally. Clark Lee said it didn't internally, but I look at it and I say, dude, like, you got to look ahead to the future. You got to prepare now. This isn't going to be fun and games forever. Now you have to think about what you do in the offseason contingency planning. It's getting real. It's not just magical anymore. And I think we're at a crossroads of the season right now and seeing where they go. I think in a couple weeks we're going to be at a crossroads of this program and where it goes as well. Do you get Diego Pavia back? We're going to talk a lot about the lawsuit over the next few weeks, I think. Good job by Chris kind of being able to break that last night. But we're going to talk about that. And we're also going to talk about what they got to do, because I think tonight shows you that there's a lot to be done with this roster next year. They're going to lose a lot of guys. And also there's some position groups that right now, if they got everybody back, they'd still need to upgrade. And I think it's a great point about the offense and not being great the last couple weeks, because they've won. And we've kind of been able to sweep it under the rug a little bit about what their offense lacks and the deficiencies that it has. Tonight you can't do that because you saw all of it come to light. Tonight was kind of a come to light night, right? It was dark, it was gloomy, all that, but it was also bringing a lot to light of what's been wrong with this Vanderbilt team. You even saw the last couple weeks the tackling was kind of poor. You saw the offense the last couple weeks probably wasn't good enough to win without a great performance from the defense, and they got that. There's lots of proof for this team now, and a lot that it's got to clean up, not only now, but you saw tonight that they've got lots to clean up once Eli Stowers goes out the door, once maybe Diego Pavia goes out the door, once you got to look at the receiver position in the offseason. We don't want to go too big picture now, but they're at a crossroads in a lot of ways right now, and I think tonight brought a lot of that to light.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think you make some good points on this being a big wake-up call, a snap back to reality. I think we're going to learn a lot about this program after tonight, these next couple of weeks. What are they made of, right? What kind of fibers, as Coach Corbin always talks about, what makes them tick. We're going to learn a ton in these final 3 weeks, and then in December, right? That's going to be a huge month of December, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about that. But not to be Mr. Positive here, but I don't want tonight, like if Vanderbilt goes to Baton Rouge and loses a close one and then comes back here to Nashville and plays an angry Tennessee team who may or may not lose to Georgia, but, I think Georgia's going to beat Tennessee. And then they lose to Tennessee and go 6-6. I think winning the bowl game will be important.
Yeah.
I really do. I think they've got that in their back pocket, though. You've got that 6th win. This has been a very special season. I don't want tonight to cloud it if they still finish strong, but maybe don't get that 7th win.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to remember. But at the same time, you have a chance here in this next month to elevate your standing, whether it's getting portal guys. We'll see what happens with Pavia. That's huge, obviously. I think people feel really good about that. So you have that to bank on. But games matter. Like tonight matters. Results matter.
Yeah.
I'm not saying kids are going to decommit now after tonight, but results still matter. It's a results-based business. It's very similar to the NFL. So tonight matters, and I think you hit on a good point of this team is at a crossroads. There's probably a lot going through these players' minds. Where am I going to be next year? I'm not sitting here saying many coaches are going to leave, but you always have that as well. Pavia, was he distracted tonight? I don't know. I mean, I kind of doubt it. He's not that kind of. Doesn't seem like that kind of guy. But there's a lot to figure out. There's a lot of questions to answer for Vanderbilt right now. You got to figure out how Pavia feels. Got to figure out, what can you do on offense. I think that's the biggest thing where on offense can we find success? They really weren't able to tonight. I think the defense will be fine. They've been fine the last few weeks. I didn't think they were awful tonight. They weren't great. I think they can improve. We haven't really seen if the offense can get back to what they were against Alabama. Special teams, Brock Taylor didn't get any chances to kick tonight, but Mirko's been fine. I think defense and special teams, you're at a decent level. You got to figure it out on offense. That's really the story tonight. It just hasn't been good enough, and that surprises me because Tim Beck and Jerry Kill and Pavia and Stowers, and we've credited them all season, and now we're not. We're critiquing them, and we're questioning them, asking them what's it going to take to get this offense back, and it's just interesting how that has flipped. I don't think it's a bad thing that it's flipped. If anything, I think it's better that the defense isn't sitting here saying, what do we have to do? I think the defense knows what they're capable of. The offense, I wonder about the belief, and I do worry about this team, but at the same time, I think we have a decent sample size. This is still a good football team.
Yeah.
They were ranked number 24 tonight. They'll drop out of the rankings. I think they still have people's respect. I mean, look, I think most people look at this realistically. They were playing their sixth straight game, right? Mm-hmm. And that's hard. You're in the SEC. You're playing a really good South Carolina team. I think it's going to finish unbeaten the rest of the way and be a borderline playoff team. I think they'll get into that discussion. So, again, I don't want to just chalk it up to you played a really good team. Vanderbilt also played poorly tonight, but they can play better. They got 2 weeks to clean everything up, and we'll see what they got in Baton Rouge. And C.J. Taylor said, we're going to be prepared to put on a show in Baton Rouge. And I think playing on the road, maybe that helps this team. So, Joey, tough result for Vanderbilt, 28-7, but I'll leave it to you for any last-minute thoughts here.
Wow, you're bringing back full circle on the day. I think Vanderbilt is in an interesting spot here because we know they're a good team. I think this season has already been the most special, maybe ever, for this program, right? The 6 wins, you beat Alabama and Auburn in the same year since 1955. There's so much that this program will be remembered for this year. Are we gonna leave it at that, or are we gonna see this team take a step forward and be remembered for a lot more than that? Is this going to be a team that adds to their legacy by going and winning in Baton Rouge, or are they going to be a team that drops the final 2 and falters the rest of the way? I think that's a big thing here, and I think this team has some capability to be better. I also think there's some capability for this to fall off a cliff, though, and it's going to be interesting to see. This was their first loss tonight that was more than one score, right? Even the Georgia State loss was a one-score loss. Mizzou was a one-score loss. Texas was a one-score loss. Time to see what they're made of. Time to see, even more so, can this team continue to keep doing it? The Magic's gone right now. It's at basically 0. Can they do it without the Magic? Can they go and win a game out of the bye after probably their second worst loss of the year? I think Georgia State was the worst, but we'll see, man. I think this is going to be a really interesting next couple weeks, not only because of that, but to follow Pavia's health, to follow the case. Interesting time to be around Vandy football, and make sure to subscribe to the board, subscribe to the channel, and we'll continue pumping out content. And, again, really interesting couple weeks for Vanderbilt football.
It'll be interesting for sure. Vanderbilt loses to South Carolina 28-7. They'll have their bye week this week and then prepare for a trip to Baton Rouge against LSU, who's playing Alabama right now. So I guess there is potential to see a limping LSU team if they lose tonight and maybe go downhill. But either way, it's a really good LSU team. We'll continue to preview that matchup as we get closer. We'll have basketball coverage with tomorrow's game and continuing, but we'll see what happens the rest of this football season. That's Joey Dwyer. I'm Billy Derrick. Thanks for checking out another episode of the Vandy Sports Podcast.